Hey YouTube, typical Canadian, got to tell you what the temperature is, minus 13.5 in the good old piston broke garage. And yeah, I thought, what the heck, it's Saturday, it's miserable, it's cold, it's winter, why not show some videos of how you do work in the garage when it's obscenely cold. Anyway, as you can see on my to-do list, type A personality, crossed a bunch of things off. Rear shock is at Capital Motorsports getting rebuilt. Look at all the other stuff that Jimmy's done. But we're going to do the rear wheel bearings today. Just out of an abundance of caution, thought I would replace those because, again, I don't know how. I'm sure they're original bearings to when the wheel was built in the early 2000s, so those are 20-year-old bearings. They may be fine, but again, this wheel came from Japan, notorious for humidity, and when I did the old stick your finger in the bearing and spin it around a bit, it wasn't the smoothest. So I'm going to remove those. So what I've already done is I've taken my handy dandy Motion Pro blind bearing remover kit, greatest tool known to man, or at least one of my favorites anyway. It has a bunch of fittings here, and it's got a little lip here. So you slide it in, expand these 4 collars here so they just sort of tuck on the inside of the bearing, and of course you can't see the inside of it, that's why it's called blind. And then you break out the slide hammer. And again, like back in the day when I didn't have these tools, you know, big Jesus punch hammer bashing away at things, trying to make it come out cleanly. Yeah, not a whole lot of fun. So this is much simpler, and you know, anytime you do something like this, is this gonna slide right out smoothly? Who knows? There could be a bit of corrosion, a bit of what is it, dissimilar metal corrosion, steel bearing race in an aluminum hub. Who knows? But the last 3 times I've done it, it's come out like butter. Still make a hell of a racket when you use the slide hammer, but anyway, I thought I'd show you what a beautiful tool this is. And I've certainly been called a tool before, but not often beautiful, so we'll see how my awesome GoPro mount from Walmart works. Oh Lord, I hope you're not catching me in the camera right now. Face for radio. Okay, here we go. Hyundai Veloster front bumper not included. So you slide the slide hammer in, and here we go. Yeah, a bit stubborn this time. It's moved. See, look at me showing off. Oh, it'll come out really easily. Just because it did that last time doesn't mean it's going to do it every time. So even just finger pressure on these things might be enough. By the way, just for the sake of my fingers, I've left the wheel inside overnight. Hopefully warm things up a bit. There we go. One spacer. Now again, one option is to go around and use a punch and bash the piss out of that bearing from the outside in, but I'm not sure I'm going to do that. I think I'll continue to use the bearing puller here. Although who knows, maybe that puts undue wear and tear on the bearing itself. or the bearing puller itself. I guess the lips are eventually going to get worn smooth, you know, as they're pushed against the lip of the bearing. So as this is the rear wheel, there's also a cush drive with 2 bearings, I believe, that goes on this. And I've left that outside. So this might be a 2-parter, or I might only demonstrate this little bit here. But yeah, I'll need to drive those bearings out too. And I believe there's actually a circlip holding those bearings on the cush drive. So let's see if this goes out any smoother. Some heat might have helped, although again, the wheel plus the bearings were inside overnight, so it got up to room temperature, around 20 degrees Celsius. But I think in order to maintain the lip here, oh God, did you see any of that? Maintain the lip here. I'll just attack it from the other side with a hammer and a punch. So stay tuned for part 2. All right, so I've gotten the other bearing out. Again, just had a big punch and 2 or 3 good whacks with the good old ball peen hammer. Still don't know the difference between, well, I know they look different between a ball peen hammer and a claw hammer. One or the other would work, I guess, but I've luckily got myself ball peen hammers thanks to my dad. A good suggestion is obviously to wipe out the bearing pockets to make sure that there's no grit or grime or leftover rust or anything in there. And it's time to get ready to press those bearings back in. And again, over time, I've been lucky to, of course, nothing like in Canada, it's plastic peanut butter jars and old metal coffee tins. Although these are becoming rarer and rarer, metal coffee tins. But I was able to come across, or found on sale, some aluminum bearing punches. I can't remember, I didn't pay much for them back in the time, and since then the prices have really gone up, but these have been invaluable in terms of their usefulness. And again, it beats, I've seen a few guys on YouTube just recently tapping around the outer face of the bearing with the ball peen hammer, not too hard because you don't want to wreck it. But yeah, that's ready to go in. One of the other tricks I've come up with too is again the old 2x4 for changing tires, but also finding an old rubber motorcycle tube that's been pooched and cutting it and stapling it to the wood itself, just as an extra layer of protection. So that wheel hub was set inside overnight. The wheel bearings are outside overnight. So there's already a 40-degree temperature differential, if you want to say -40 to, or -20 to +20. And some guys have said, oh, you put the bearings in the freezer. Sure you do. But the difference in temperature between your freezer, which usually operates at about -4 degrees Celsius, and the good old Canadian winter, which, as you can see, operates inside at -15 to 20 degrees Celsius. It's just going to have everything a bit cooler. And And I've noticed this particularly on the parts I bought from Japan. And again, you folks who live close to the ocean, or at least closer than me to the ocean, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's this white corrosion. And this is a steel part, but it's been zinc coated. And rather than being like the brownie rust, this is some white corrosion. So again, I've seen it on some parts I've gotten from the UK, some parts from Japan for sure. And I'm assuming that's some saltwater corrosion. Again, maybe someone can clarify that. But again, you don't see it, but I'm certainly not going to put this back in there with that corrosion on there. So off camera, I'll give that a tidy up before I set it in as the internal spacer. But what I thought would be kind of neat is that if I could use science, Bill Nye, and see if I can heat up this hub enough with my trusty heat gun so that the bearing, which is currently at minus 15 degrees, slips in without any encouragement from the ball peen hammer and the bearing punch. So let's just see. Heat this up a bit. So again, this was already at room temperature, already at 20 degrees. It's cooled off slightly because I brought it outside. But I don't know if you can hear me over the din of the heat gun, but I once, when I was replacing the steering head shaft in a set of triple clamps, I left the lower triple clamp outside. It was minus 30 again. No, sorry, left the threaded piece outside. Took the lower triple clamp in, took it inside, put it in the oven. Don't tell Kate. Till it got to about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And when I took it outside again, I was ready to, you know, encourage it with the ball peen hammer and a block of wood, and it just slid right in. So we'll see if this happens here. And I think back before heat guns became commonly available, and the idea of, you know, firing up a propane torch and open flame against something like this, it just, you know, how did we get along without it? So I'm thinking that should be hot enough. Brand new bearing from All Balls, and yeah, not quite. It's not going to take much to put it in, but and of course, as soon as the cold bearing comes into contact with the hot hub, it's going to want to stick a bit. So never drive in straight. That's when I need to buy myself a several $1,000 hydraulic punch. I'm pretty sure these bearings just fit flush, but I will just double check. See the intense concentration on the narrator's face. Yeah, that's flush. So I will insert the spacer once I've cleaned it up, and we'll put in the other side. So spacer in. Last minute of heating up this part of the hub. I doubt the bearing will fall in, but we shall see. Oh, 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 oh. Yeah, as soon as the cold bearing touches the well, again, making a racket, but I'm really not hammering too hard on that bearing. Done. Well, that's it for the hub. I'm going to go and do the same thing for the cush drive, which requires some circlip and some stuff like that. So we'll be back. One of the good things to remember when you are a backyard or hobbyist mechanic is knowing when to call time. And I didn't really spend a lot of time on this, but there are two bearings sandwiched together and pressed into this hub here. And while it looks like you could, again, beat the crap out of it by banging away on the inside of that, this hub is aluminum, and I just don't like that. So I'm thinking I could probably find either the machine shop in Minnedosa or the one in Rapid City on the way to work, just seeing if they could, over their coffee break or lunch hour, press out those two bearings in a less destructive sort of way, and I'll just take it back and tap the new ones in with the same use of heat and cold winter temperatures. So we're gonna stop the rear wheel work for now, and then I'm going to see if I can't sort out my front steering damper solution on this TT680. So cut. So this will be the final part of today's work in the frigid conditions, but I just thought I'd point out a few things. One, I'm not going to turn myself into a American Chopper's hardtail. That's just a piece of angle iron in place while the shock is off getting rebuilt by Dave at Capital Motorsports in Winnipeg. So the other thing is that this used to be, oh god, it's plastic and it's cold. Anyway, this little cover here, this is my, drastically cut down and simplified a wiring harness for the race bike project here, because it's not running, lights or anything like that. But there's only 3 fuses in here: master ignition fuse and 2 idiot light fuses here. I think one of them might be like an ignition switch fuse. Anyway, 30 and 2 7.5s, I believe. It was wide open, and I thought about, I should tidy up this section here and modify all this stuff and yada yada yada. No, I searched long and hard, and I finally found one of these covers, new OEM, in the Ducati Ziploc bag. $40 Canadian for that thing. But anyway, you'll never see it when it's on the bike, but at least I'll know that the fuses aren't going to fall out or anything like that. So anyway, that kind of made me chuckle. But in the sense of saving money, oh geez, we're in shadow here. Might be hard to make out what I've done here, but what we got here is our cheap and cheerful $25 steering damper off of eBay from China. It's an exact copy of the $400 mattress steering damper you can also get, but it doesn't have mattress on it. But I was trying to figure out a way to mount a steering damper without, like it as not a temporary measure, but in a way that didn't require more cutting and welding and fabricating and that sort of thing. So it took long and hard to think about it, but these tubes are 1-inch diameter, and so what we have here is a couple of Chinese 1-inch diameter rear view mirror clamps. So as this clamps down over the tube, it'll have a proper, it's the right inner diameter to fit the OD of the tube. So what I've done is I've mounted one of these in this orientation up here. I had to find one that had a M8 threaded boss. Most of them are M10, but I found some for M8. $7.72 Canadian from China, shipped in 2 weeks. And so this mounts to this cross beam here. It is a bit close to these wires here, but again, these are rock hard because it's so cold. So I think I can probably just make sure these are tucked out of the way a bit more for safety's sake, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I need to adjust some spacers and make sure things are mounted up here. But you can see that the one rose joint fits here. I'll space it down. I think I'll put a spacer in there just to make sure that it's oriented in the right way. Some Loctite or safety wire that. And then, yeah, the other piece is mounted. This is too long here. Again, I need to get the right size bolt. This is just temporary with a spacer underneath here for the damper body here. This is just a trowel fitting. You know me, there's no way I would put this together without a lock nut and proper length bolts and all that good sort of stuff. But just to see, and this is the damper's wound right off, but it does travel, properly through its range of motion without. It's very close. It's like I designed it, or it was meant for it. But anyway, once everything's tidied up and nipped up and put together properly, I think I now have a functioning adjustable steering damper using the original fitting that came in the Triumph triple clamps and this little clamp here. So I've seen this expressed in a variety of ways, in bike magazines or fabrication places, and I first heard it from my dad. When you get stuck on something, sometimes it's best just to walk away. And I've walked away from this several times. I've looked at buying fork clamps. I've looked at welding, pieces to this fairing stay, and doing a whole bunch of different solutions to the steering damper problem. And with some more thinning, this is what I came up with. Now, this is assuming that with anything homemade and fabricated using my pea brain and some cocktail napkins, this will actually work. But I think it will. What may happen is that if this works in principle, then when it comes time for stripping the frame back and getting it powder coated, I might weld a bracket onto here or something like that to make it a bit more permanent, although this clamp seems to be working quite fine. Again, I don't want to crank it up to full and see if I can dislodge this. One, because I don't have the proper spaces in place, and two, at -20, that's a perfect opportunity to have that seal fail. I don't think it's intended to operate in that temperature range, so we'll see if it works. And I guess the last thing, like, why are you fitting a steering damper to an old Ducati, who were never known for having aggressive steering geometry? Just in conversations with some guys who race these TTs or who build custom bikes, it may not look radical, but I have altered the geometry of this bike. This was originally designed to work with, I think, a 16-inch front wheel or maybe an 18-inch front wheel, and also some forks with a heck of a lot more offset. So I've likely shortened the wheelbase significantly, maybe by an inch, by running these forks with this size wheel and that type of offset on that top triple clamp. So it's going to have an impact on the geometry and the need or not of having a steering damper. But for the sake of $7.72 for the clamp, $25, and again, I've bought another one, so this can go back on the 848. But I think it was $29 plus shipping. That's a pretty cheap steering damper solution. So we'll see if it works. If it doesn't, well, I tried, and I can figure out far stupider ways to spend $50, let's say. I've spent $50 on stupider things than a potential steering damper solution for my little track bike project. So anyway, that's it for now. I'm cold. I don't know if you could see anything because of all the vapor coming out of my cake hole as I talked, but yeah, maybe this is a new Discovery Channel show. Instead of Ice Road Truckers, it's like Ice Cold Bikers. I don't know. Working title. Anyway, stay warm, folks, and yeah, we'll post something new soon.